Welcome to another episode of the PPSS Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another great guest. I've seen this person many times on stage speaking. I see him on virtual calls. I see him at virtual conferences. And every time he speaks, people listen because he's so good at what he does. And he comes highly recommended by others. So I'm very excited to have him here today. He has over 40 years plus experience in the tech area. He manages complex level problems, coming up with effective, innovative, and also viable solutions, whether it's AI, blockchain, cybersecurity, all this tech stuff that I really don't understand that much, which is why I have him here today. He's absolutely a genius in that area. He's worked with some of the biggest names out there from Microsoft, Cisco, Oracle, helping those revenues go up, and other Fortune 150 or global organizations. So please welcome a technical expert, CEO and founder of Infinovate, Mr. Maurice Hamilton.
I am so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm really excited to do this podcast with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm very, very excited to speak with you because you work in an area that I think lots of people just go, you know what? I have somebody else handle that because it's just too complex of a item to jump into. I'll just focus on my thing. But before we jump into how you help companies increase their revenues and become more and more successful, did you grow up thinking, you know what? The tech area is where I want to be right from the beginning?
You know, that's a really, really great question, because now we're going to go back and say, what really started this whole thing to happen? You know, and I have to go back to a grade school, and I was one of those people in the class where somebody would beat you up because I was the nerd in the class. And I would be the guy that went home and it said, read this chapter. And I read the whole book. So I would go, hey, teacher, I know the answer. I know the answer.
And then you get all those glares from everybody else.
Exactly. I didn't know I was a nerd until later on in life. But, you know, I always had that instinct in my mind that I like solving problems. And at that time, when this, like, you know, dating myself like 30, 40 years ago, technology was something that was really on the forefront. And I said, you know what, I can either go to law school or I can be a more of an IT person. And I met with some people who I knew that were lawyers, and they said, you really don't want to do this, you know? You want to do something that's actually going to be more innovative, that you can contribute more to society. And I think that I started doing I was a software engineer when I first started out, and I got the bug inside of me, and I've been doing it all these years, all these decades, and I've never stopped.
Awesome. What was it about the potential of becoming a lawyer that interested you?
You know, law still interests me today. And I look at the different situations that, especially with our politicians and our government, all the things that's actually happening. And I've always had that critical mind. You know, I've always had that mindset, you know, is this the best solution that we could come up with? Or going back and saying, let's get down to the root cause of the problem. And you actually pick up those skill sets when you do development. You have to start, and you have to do, when you design your code for your program, you have really got to think of all different levels and think about what if type scenarios. And I think that actually it parlays over to law. When I wanted to do that early on, I said, you know what, let's go back and solve the root cause of the problem, and let's see what can we do to actually make these situations better for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so I think that critical thinking aspect has always been with me. When I was a little kid, I used to always watch the Law and Order shows, anything that had to do with cops, anything that had to do with any kind of courtroom. I'm way back to my days of watching black and white episodes of Perry Mason. You know, and I just love that courtroom drama, and I love that you think about the questions 8 steps ahead of the and you know what the person's probably going to say, but you want to lead that person to answer the question that you want them to answer it, and then reframe the question so they ask the same question but in a different manner and still get the same results. Then, you know, I always like to think that way. So it's a critical thinking mindset.
Awesome. Well, it's nice that you're able to scratch that itch of doing what you do right now. Have you ever gone back to your friends and go, thank you so much for telling me not to jump into this?
I have. You know what's really funny? When I run into those people now, they'll come back and say, I always knew that you're going to do something like what you're doing today. Mm-hmm. So they always saw it, and so they always compliment me on my accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. Now, you work with some really, really big companies, Microsoft, Cisco, and you've helped a lot of those companies increase their revenues. What are some of the common things that even companies of that caliber are missing that small businesses can go, wait a minute, I could change that into mine as well?
I have to say that it's really actually building up those relationships with the clients and actually figuring out, not just having them come back and say, here's what the problem, we want to have it resolved, but to go back and dig deeper. And when I say dig deeper, I'm going back and say, you know what, let me sit down and actually sit down with all the stakeholders. Let me see what their pain points are. And I think that when I actually sit down with people and actually really lift the hood up and say, okay, let's look at all the different components of this engine here and figure out what the pain points really are that's maybe causing a problem. Because a lot of times I've figured out that what they think is a problem isn't really the root cause of the problem. And I think it's that personal, let's go back and look at the really core issues of what's really going on. I map it out and say, here's how we're going to design it. Here's how we're going to implement it. And then actually having that relationship to follow up with those individuals, I think it does make a big difference, Fong.
Now, what are some of the things that people think, you know what, this is a problem for something else. It's not a tech problem. It's not a AI problem. It's not a blockchain or cybersecurity problem. But then you go, wait a minute, have you thought about it this way? Because if we do apply AI or blockchain or cybersecurity, it will actually, in fact, solve this problem. Is there cases like that?
There are, and I can think about, for example, we've worked with a couple of different companies where they actually have warehouse operations. And then we'll think about the warehouse operations, and they're saying different things like, hey, you know what, we want to get the product out as fast as we can to the customer. And by the time they actually get the warehouse order there, another day or 2 days has expired. And I'll go back to the customer and say, okay, let's look at the process starting from when you actually take that call from the customer. Let's lay it out. What are the different steps it takes for you to get that order into the system? And we'll go back and look at that and say, okay, for a certain amount of orders here, there may be 2 or 3 different phases that they have to go through. But we'll look at that and say, how can we actually decrease that? How can we actually set it up so that order, if that order is approved right away, even go through the approval process and say, how can we streamline this approval process? For example, a client may actually have a customer that they've done business with for multiple years and multiple different invoices or different events. And so why does that customer still need to go through the same billing process? I mean, the order processing, like, for example, if I call for the first time customer, they shouldn't. That order goes through the process for it. That order should be processed right away. And within minutes after that order has been entered into the system, it should be back into the warehouse, and it should be on that UPS or FedEx truck that afternoon without any doubt. And those kind of delays actually, the customers need to understand that, and we need to go back and say, how can we improve the efficiency so you can deliver the highest level of customer services for your clients, so you can get that reputation that you are the go-to customer. So I think that's just one quick example that comes to mind, because I've actually gone back and helped a customer actually look at the sensors and look at the inventory and say, okay, this order was actually, today is actually Friday, for example, that order is entered into the system on Wednesday, but yeah, they just got the order that particular day, you know? So this whole thing about building in processes, about building in efficiencies, is about building in speed of implementation and for the clients so they can actually get those orders out as fast as they can.
Now, with the previous pandemic and all that kind of stuff that got lots of people to start working at home, people are starting to think, okay, what do I need? Right? They think that, okay, I just turn on my computer, I can start working from home, I can start doing my own business, all that kind of stuff, small businesses and whatnot. What are some of the things that you think that home businesses who just start need to really focus on and implement so that they're either protected or they can streamline?
I would say one of the things, they have to have a really updated computer system that's really fast.
So the old, like, big monitors don't work anymore, right?
You have to be efficient with that. And I say that because we run across a lot of clients where they actually have systems. They say, you know what, it's working. I can get my applications for it. I'll check my email for it. Well, now things have changed a little bit. You need to be actually at the forefront of actually efficiency. So looking at the systems, looking at your internet speeds and see what can you do to actually increase your internet speeds to make sure, for example, we're on this particular Zoom call, you know, making sure that when you're on that call for it, you can actually get the highest speed of bandwidth as possible. You know, making sure your phone systems, if you actually have to take phones, If you're using your cell phone or if you're using a virtual phone, a lot of our clients actually switched over to a VoIP phone. So that way, if somebody calls the office, if I'm dialing your number and I type in your extension, let's say if it's 123, that VoIP phone is going to pick up that call as if I'm talking to somebody that's in the office. It shouldn't matter. So I would say just look at the basic elements of your infrastructure and see what can you do to actually speed it up to maximize the efficiencies of it. So that way it doesn't matter if you're at home or if you're actually in a physical office, you're still not missing a beat.
Now, we'll fast forward to them getting to a point where they have a big company, a big business, lots of people under them, and they already have tech infrastructure in place. They already have cybersecurity in place. Is it still recommended for people in their area to reach out to you for an assessment, for consultation? And usually what do you go through with them so that you could go, you know what, you do have some deficiencies here, but we could kind of focus on that and all that kind of stuff?
A great question. And I think that when it comes down to it, and you mentioned the word assessments, you still need to do assessments. And that assessment could be, for example, a physical assessment. Now we have to be able to actually have access control. Who actually can access those facilities? Who can actually access those particular databases? Who has access to it, to certain files? And I think that now it's even more critical than it was before, especially when it comes to like cybersecurity, that you really do need to lock down your access to your systems and to your physical presence or physical buildings to make sure that you're providing your clients and your customers and your vendors with a lock on their data. Data is so important right now. You want to make sure that nobody can actually get to that information, and you want to make sure that your clients can actually retrieve or access the data that they need in order to be operationally efficient as possible. So I think it's a couple of different elements with that, and those assessments really help. Taking a look at the whole infrastructure of the company, saying how can we map it out so all bases are covered as much as possible.
Now, when it comes to social media, that is a space where lots of people are in, and there's always that kind of thought process of how much should I engage, how much should I share, how much is this person sharing with me actually in fact true? Is this person a bot or not a bot? How do you protect yourself when it comes to accepting new people coming into your list and then potentially falling into a trap where it's actually a fake person? How do you assess all that?
Yeah, that's another great question. And you know what? And I think that that's a really valid question to ask because, and I look at us and I say, I kind of separate in two different areas. I look at pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, it was not unusual to actually have people actually engage or meet face-to-face. It was not unusual to have somebody waiting in the lobby to go back and take you out to lunch, or to have that kind of like interaction with people so you can actually build up those relationships. Post-pandemics, I think a lot more people have, or a lot of more corporations have actually put different barriers in place to actually go back and say, you know what, we only want to meet on an as-needed basis. There are a lot of different barriers in place than it was pre-pandemic. And I think that since you mentioned social media, you have to really here's where we talk about locking down your systems. You need to make sure that you have firewalls in place to try to block out those people as much as possible. I actually had this morning a person that got on my calendar because I still want to meet with people, and I'll get on and say, hey, look, meet with me and talk to me so we can figure out how we can I can solve your problems and you can solve mine. Well, it turns out I had to put a process in place a few months ago because I need to validate who those individuals are. And it's easy for somebody to get onto my calendar, but I still have a process in place to go back where my assistant would go back and say, let me verify who this person is, making sure they're not a bot. I receive more bot type information and more inquiries of people trying to sell me on some of the main platforms today than I ever did before. And I have to weed them out in the stage of the game because I know that everybody's game is to actually go back out and sell something, but when you start to become a weed, where you actually are inundating my mailbox more with you trying to sell me something than me actually trying to reach out to my clients, it's a problem. So I think that we've actually, in our organization, many other organizations have set it up so they can weed those individuals out. Use the firewalls to try to stop a lot of those unwanted type requests. go back and verify the information with the person, pick up the phone and call them up and say, hey, look, I see that you set a scheduled meeting up with me on this particular date. What is the intention? What's the purpose of this call? Go back and verify that information so you can weed them out. And it's unfortunate, but our society's actually turned to social media. It's a blessing and it's a misfortune. It's a misfortune because if we block the doors where you can't meet with any individuals face to face, and we become much more of a remote and virtual type society, you want to make sure that your time is being used in the best ways possible. And that when you reach out to people, that you're really talking to a person with really great intentions, and you're focusing on what's going to actually be best for you and what's best for your organization, And so that's why we tell clients, we talk to them, let's go back and start with the firewalls, with the systems, and actually set them up so we can actually weed out who the bad actors are, and actually make sure that we're only talking to the people that you really want to meet with and talk to. Does that make sense? I know there's a long joint on the answer. I thought about all the different processes we have in place for it, and there's a lot with that.
Firewall.
Yes.
I also picked up that I like how you are, for someone who's so technical, who loves the tech space, a lot of stuff is online, you still value the face-to-face, the in-person face-to-face stuff, and it goes to how important relationships are. And that's something you've been very good at. And lots of people who are in the tech space, engineers, very left-minded people, they got into those areas because it's like, I don't want to talk to people. I don't want to be in front of people. I just want to sit down and do number crunching, all that kind of stuff. So for you, was the social aspect of meeting people, building relationships, was that difficult for you to grasp, or was it just easy for you to get into?
Yeah, great question. It was easy for me to get into. And I have to say that because early on in my career, I was actually more of a sales engineer. I've always been that person that actually pick up the phone and talk to people and actually figure out what their technical needs are. And actually, if I couldn't meet with them face to face, I still did it over the phone. And I believe in those. I really do believe that having really good relationships with your potential clients or current clients, or even clients in the past, you don't burn those bridges. You want to make sure that you have those relationships for it, because I think and here's where that human aspect comes out of it. And I think that with humanity, I think that we still need to be in touch with each other. We still need to know the human side of everybody, despite with AI, and I still think the AI is a really great thing, but I also think I can see the potential harm in that. But I still think that we need to have the human interaction, because it still keeps our society and our even with the company, with their social environment, it still keeps it together because you're interacting with people.
Mm-hmm. Now, before you've mentioned how the tech space, AI, cybersecurity could be implemented in a organization when it comes to the warehouse and taking orders and stuff like that. Is there a story where you can share that you came up with this amazing creative solution that nobody else has came up with in that group, and go, wow, that was amazing?
That's a really great question. I'm trying to think of something I came up with that nobody else has done. And I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I can think of some in situations where I've actually come up with solutions for the clients and saying that we made it better. Mm-hmm. For example, and I here's where that process mind comes into play. And I always tell people that the best thing that you can do for your organization is to wow your customers. WOW, wow your customers. And if you wow your customers, and I think it elevates you to a different level. And I always go back and say, have the interaction when somebody's actually coming to your office. Wow them when they first walk through the door. Give them something that they can look at, for example, that they can see, like old computers, and you say, oh, I remember that computer. That's an 8088 processor. That's a 286 processor. When somebody comes to our office for it, they can see something that they can relate to. Wow them with some kind of difference, or some different color walls or something like that. And I think that when we worked with a specific client, we're saying, how can you give them the wow effect? And that wow effect is actually go back and actually be able to have somebody place an order at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then by 12 noon they're receiving not invoice, because you don't invoice them yet until it's shipped, but a confirmation that the order has been placed and has been processed and the order was shipped tonight. You're giving them emails throughout the day saying your order is scheduled to go out this afternoon. If you have any additional questions, please give us a call. At 5 o'clock before they leave out the door, that order has been invoiced because your systems are so set up that you can actually get in processing. And I say that because we actually help a client where we actually took iPads or a tablet. And so that way, if and it did it on two different levels. One, when that product is being received to the client, the computer actually tells the client where they're going to put that pallet. So the computer automatically tells the warehouse driver. So there's no thinking involved with it. Well, I always say, and let the computer do the most of the thinking for it because there's always interaction. But let the computer tell you where to place that pallet. And then they can go back and say, oh, the computer's telling me to go to F23. So, they go to bin, to F section, to second level, and then you're going to put it into the third slot. So they know where they're going to go. And so it helps when they're actually stocking items, and it helps when they're actually pulling items where the computer is actually telling them, you need to go to this particular item first. And I think if we actually use the computer systems and use sensors, it makes it a lot faster. So those orders are being processed in a much faster way. So that customer, end of the day, they don't see all that's happening in the back of the in the warehouse system, but they can see that order has been processed. But everybody within the organization has taken their level of efficiencies up 2 or 3 different levels, where it makes their jobs much easier to process orders for the client.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the reasons people are afraid of technology or don't want to implement it is because they're afraid that it's going to take away their jobs. Is that true?
I said it depends on jobs. There are a lot of companies out there that are companies where they do HVAC, they do plumbing, they do construction. AI is not going to do that. Well, for the most part, AI is not going to use to take those positions away. They're always going to be there. You go to a restaurant now, and I saw this happen. I remember a long time ago, I was in New Jersey at I can't think of Newark, the airport in New York, what the name of it is, but I was at the airport and I saw something and I said, this you can sit down at a table and they had a tablet where you can order your food and your food can come to you. I said, I predicted that 5 years prior to that it's going to be that way. And I look at different areas, and for example, like restaurants. And I remember once I was in Chicago, this was about maybe 10, 15 years ago, and people were actually protesting. They were not saying anything bad about them, as I understand, people do what they got to do, but they were saying we want a certain wage, and they said that that's what we're on strike for. I said, okay. And I was talking to the guy, and just me talking to him, saying, you do realize that the more and more you push these companies to go back and give you higher wages, that they're going to figure out a better process in order to have people come in and actually get their orders placed, and even have robots actually in the back one day just flipping the burgers, and everything's going to be so automated that they're not going to need 15 of you guys working at the place. Sure enough, 5 years later, 10 years later, so I walk into a McDonald's restaurant in the airport, and they have a big kiosk to place your order. Here's your number for it. And I didn't interact with anybody except for somebody putting my bag there saying, here's your order. Yep. And I think that there's certain positions or certain professions out there that some of those jobs will be eliminated. And I think that this gives everybody a chance right now to actually go back and actually figure out how you can actually bring value. What can you do? What kind of skill sets can you attain right now, especially when it comes to AI, when it comes to technology, when it comes to improvement efficiencies, that you can be of value with the organizations, so your position won't be replaced. Mm-hmm. And but I can see some positions actually being eliminated, and I can see some of those with the restaurant job, for example. I can see that, but we're always going to need it. You're always going to need somebody to actually have that interaction with you and to be able to help you.
That's very, very true. Now that you've showcased some of your future predicting abilities, I'm going to ask you this. What do you see coming in the future with regards to AI, blockchain? How does that impact other people? What's those new ideas that you're thinking about that's going to come in 5, 6 years? Well,
I'm a really huge proponent of blockchain. And here's some of my predictions. I predict that eventually we're going to get to the stage, especially in blockchain, especially when it comes to supply chain, where someone can be in a different country, they can load a container onto a ship where you're actually getting automatically feedback. And I can see supply chain working with that container when it leaves one country, when it'll say in transit, so you know where that you can track that on a GPS system. You'll know when it gets received to a port of entry. You'll know when it actually changes ownership or somebody else takes control, how they say takes control of that particular container. You'll see where it goes every step of the process. And I think that the beauty about something with blockchain is that once somebody actually puts something on, for example, like container, and it actually makes it to the port of entry, they are paid. They're happy. They don't have to wait until it actually gets to the receiving dock of the client, which could be 3-4 weeks later. They're getting their money. So it's going to improve the efficiencies with it. So I can see blockchain being it's confusing right now because there are so many different moving parts with it. But I can still say that it's going to be a process going to be more efficient and moving forward. I can see that. I can see more sensors in everything that we do. Sensors going to your whole home is going to have sensors. By the time you actually pull up into the driveway, it's going to actually recognize who you are. When you open the door to your condo, whatever case would be, it's going to say, oh, welcome home. 15 minutes because it's going to be able to pick up your behaviors with it. It's going to know to lower your temperature to whatever degree or raise it, whatever case it is, wherever you are, to a certain thing, specifications that you want to have. So it's going to be more automated. And I can see it. You can see it with EVs, but I think that our society is going to move more and more towards that. That's a good thing. The bad thing that I can still see, and I agree somewhat with Elon Musk and with some of the other individuals out there, and saying, the technology is moving faster than we can actually change. Right. And I think that we need to make sure that we're not giving the systems, because I know that there's some of the systems, they're how do you say, are you smarter than a fifth grader? Well, those computer systems are a heck of a lot smarter than a fifth grader, where they're learning faster and faster and faster. And I do have a concern that the computers will start thinking for themselves, because they're algorithms. These algorithms are going to get faster, they're going to get better, they're going to get more predictable, and they're going to be able to go back and say, you know what, I'm predicting this. And a computer, since I'm predicting this is going to happen, I'm going to go ahead and put this in play. And you didn't tell that computer to go ahead and do that, but I do have a concern with that. So I do see blockchain, I do see machine learning, I do see AI, I do see sensors on everything. Eventually, it's going to make our society more efficient, but I think that it's still, we have to use the caution flag and say, let's go back and make sure that we contain this so that it doesn't get out of control.
Have you found situations where you go, wow, I don't use this muscle anymore, I need to really keep it up, and therefore you do something else? So for instance, like very simply, our phones are now storing all this data, storing all these numbers. We don't need to remember phone numbers anymore, right? Like, when was the last phone number you remembered? Probably your own home from like years ago.
Exactly.
Right? No. So then our memories are not utilized. Like, we don't have the need to memorize stuff anymore, right? Sometimes back then you go, okay, I have to memorize these quotes, I have to memorize this process, I have to memorize it. Well, no, you just grab your phone and you can find it. It's all there. Is there anything that you go, wow, I haven't done this for so long, it's so automatic now, I think I might be losing this skill set?
That's a really great question. I love to read books, and I'm the kind of guy that I can read 2 or 3 books in a month. And really, and books on technology. It could be books on my favorite author, John Grisham, which I haven't read in a long time. But I like reading books. I think I found that I don't read as many books as I did once before. That I'm watching more podcasts. I'm watching more information come out about an article about this and technology, where I'm finding my skill sets to read the books at the frequency that I was reading, pre-COVID, has decreased a lot. So, and I can see my that behavior, and I don't want that to happen, because I love sitting back and relaxing and reading that information, because I think that knowledge is power, especially if you utilize it. But I think that I'm reading what I need to go to, because I'm taking deeper and deeper dives into, like, for example, like cybersecurity, and I think that's a negative, because I'm losing that interaction I have with the old-fashioned physical book. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you schedule yourself to do that now? Like, okay, no, I have to hold this physical book just to get that muscle going in.
I do, but right now it's really kind of tough, because the time that I set aside to go back and read, for example, like a Saturday or Sunday, is taken because now I'm taking the accelerated cybersecurity classes.
Ah,
That replaced me reading the books, you know. So it's one of those things, but it is, I'm aware of it. And I think the first one of the steps, and how do you say the 5 steps in a process, to one, you have to be aware, acknowledge that there is a problem. I think that's the first step I forgot what it's called. But I think that's it. But that is, and I am aware of that. So I'm actually trying to make a concerted effort to actually set time aside so I can actually read more.
no, that's for you. I don't know. Like, do you find that it's important to keep younger generations kind of grounded to not be that reliant on technology?
I agree. And I mean, how many times you go to a restaurant and you're sitting at a table waiting for your food, you have a conversation with individuals, and everybody at the table is going like this. I say, you know, because this has actually become our new umbilical cord, and I have a concern with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know what, the whole purpose of actually having dinner with everyone is to take these, put them down, don't acknowledge it, and I actually I'm at the stage right now when I go to dinner with people, I say, for the next 45 minutes, nobody's going to pick up this. Because, and I make a deal, I tell them, we're going to a restaurant, we're going to talk, we're going to actually interact with each other. We're not going to use this. And I've done that many times, and people look at me and say, wow, we're not interacting on our phones, but take a look at everybody around us. Everybody's, and I think that kind of like notches everything down. And it goes back to that phrase I mentioned before about humanity. Mm-hmm. And I think that is concerned with, on a social level, that we're going to take that fabric away from us to have those human interactions with it. And it's a concern. And I think that we need to make sure that we are very cognizant of how much we're connected with this, because I don't know how many people it tells you how many hours you're on the phone, you know? So, but I think that's because especially with the younger generation, and I think that I don't think that they know what they don't know what they don't know. And they've always had these, and I don't think they understand the importance of actually having those interactions.
Yeah, I have a young toddler, and we're like, yeah, we can't watch TV. TV time is done. She's like, well, how about the phone? I'm like, yeah, I can't watch that either. I can imagine those dinners with you with somebody who just got exposed to that rule. They'll sit there and goes, so, how's the weather, huh?
Yeah. Exactly. And I like it. I love it, because I tell people now when we go out, you know, to the restaurants, I say, look, I'm not going to go out to restaurants where everybody's going to be on their phones.
Yeah.
You know, I understand if something buzzes you, you got an emergency call and you have to go, you know, take care of something like on a 911 basis. But for the most part, the whole purpose of coming out to dinner is to have social interactions with each other. And it's not to go back and actually be a commitment or slave to this thing right here. We don't need to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, speaking with you right now, I can tell you're a person that's very, very motivated, lots of high energy, especially when it comes to technology and whatnot. And I also, before we got recording, know that you were up at like 5 o'clock solving a problem. And the funny thing is, when I said, how are you doing? You're like, I feel great. I'm having a great day. I'm like, what was so great about it? He's like, I got to solve a problem. I'm like, wow, you like waking up to problems.
I do.
So what keeps you going? What keeps you high energy? What keeps you with this great motivation to help people? What's your regimen?
You know, and I that's one element of actually being able to solve a problem. But the second level, I would say actually delivering the highest level of customer satisfaction that I can. I mean, this particular center called me at 5 in the morning. They're scheduled to open at 7 in the morning. I had an engineer out there, you know, a few minutes before they opened. Granted that they were still setting up, they were an hour delayed from actually opening their doors but we resolved the problem. So they lost 1 hour of productivity, but they'll make it up. You know, they had a little backlogs. Take a 30-minute lunch or 7-hour lunch, and they'll catch up. Mm-hmm. And I thrive off of that. And I think that with my business, and I always look at this and say, how can I do it better? How can I do it faster? And how can I deliver the highest levels of customer service and actually expand my business and make my employees happy to take it to another level? It's every day I wake up and say, how can I take it to another level? And that's my motivation. That keeps me going, you know?
That is awesome. You're waking up going, oh, what problem can I solve today? When it comes to relationship building, that's something that we've kind of hinted on today already. How do you maintain those relationships? Do you kind of go, oh, I haven't talked to this person for 4 months, let's send them a message? Or do you have a system? Is that systemized in your calendars and your tech space?
It is. Now, I remember I was telling you about the social media part of it, where you have to kind of like watch who's actually trying to contact you. One thing that I do, I reach out to my even not just friends, not just family, but to business associates. I actually had a business associate say, congratulations to my wife. We've been married for 21 years now, and I'm really, really happy. Blah, blah, blah. You know, he went back and talked about how he's happy with it. And I actually gave him a congratulate. We only met like a couple of times. A congratulatory email saying, congratulations. I put a little comment there. It's more personalized. And I think that one of the things that separates me and a lot of other individuals from just being a regular person is actually to go out there, build those relationships, but just go back and just to thank people. When you see something, acknowledge it. You know, it'll take me 20, 30 minutes of throughout the course of the day to go back and check because I'm a person, you see how you know how I feel about the phones now, but I'm not a person that's going to be actually checking this all throughout the day. But when I do go back and acknowledge it, I'll go back and send an email, send text messages to people. And I've done it probably 4 or 5 times this morning already, you know, with different things. And I think that that's to actually let people know that I'm actually they're still in my thought. And because you never know, I with those relationships, this one individual happens to be the IT director for a large a bank. And one day he's going to remember that, and he may call me back. You know what? I kind of like Maurice, and he'll remember me and to say, "Hey, this is what we have right now. We know you love what process, you know, we know that you love solving problems." That person will call me back someplace down the road. And so, but it's genuine, it's sincere. And I really do believe that if we keep in touch with people, that we actually don't break any kind of fabrics of the relationships, it does make a difference. And it makes my life even better because knowing that, and I don't want anything to come back. I don't expect that guy to come back and say, thanks, Marie, although he did in this particular case, but it's just to let people know that I'm thinking of you. I'm really happy for you. Or in something have something bad happen. So really my condolences in that particular manner. And I think it does that human touch actually makes a difference. And because I think that no matter what you do, you have to have solid relationships with individuals.
I like that because the thing is, lots of people don't realize what that simple little message or that one simple reach out that you've done could cascade into something that's a lot bigger in the future, but you're not keeping score. Right, you're not expecting it, and it's something that I recommend lots of people to do. Now, for someone like yourself who loves solving problems, especially problems that come at 5 a.m. in the morning, you have to be creative, you have to be sharp, you have to be fast. Right, you're working on the fly. Is there something that you do on a regular basis that keeps your mind sharp?
And that's where when we talked about the books, so I don't read the books anymore like I used to, but it's keeping up with technology. And it really is. And I'll think about, and I'll read an article. An article could be, 5 minutes to 10 minutes to read the article, but to understand what was happening with it. And I store that in the back of my brain. I'll go back and say, and I see something with somebody else, and hey, because we talked about this in the past, were you aware of this? And I forward that article over to them, and I think that by keeping up with the technology, keeping up with the industry, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Every day I get some kind of alert or something that happened with cybersecurity. I want to make sure that I'm keeping up with that information and actually letting my clients know that may impact them down the road, that they need to make sure that they're using as many or doing what we told them, suggested that they do, to build up those firewalls, to make sure that they actually have their proxy servers and everything set up the way we suggested that they do, to prevent from being another statistic. And I think that by reading that information, staying on top of the industry and what's happening with, not even that, but just even on a global aspect of the other world, today I'm reading about what's happening over in Paris. I'm saying, well, that has no relevance to anything I'm doing here, but it's nice to know what's happening on the other side of the globe, 10,000 miles away. Right. So I think that's what makes a difference.
That is awesome. My last final formal question to you is, putting you back on that stage that you're so comfortable on, one message for everybody to remember the legacy of Maurice for, the one message that you want people to remember you for, what would that be?
To remember me for, and I would say it's going to go back to the relationships, and it goes back to something that you do, that you're very, very good at this. And I would have to say, seek coaching. Be able to build up a relationship with somebody who can actually coach you, because we don't have all the answers. If you think that you have all the answers, then you definitely need to get some coaching. So you want to be able to seek coaching, talk to different professionals to see how can you actually not only make yourself a better individual, but you can also make your business operate at a much higher level. It's really good to talk to the people, and I always say, look and see what they've done, look and see what they have accomplished. If they can actually give you sound advice and say, hey, let me tell you a story about this is what I went through this, and tell you how you can avoid this from happening, or how you can actually take the shortcut to get to X, then do it. So I would have to say, keep building up those relationships and seek coaching whenever possible.
Awesome. Good words to live by. Now, before I let you go and solve more problems, I got 5 quick questions for you. Number 1, you're stranded on the deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. No consequence.
Chocolate. Chocolate with almonds.
Before I ask the second question, I'm going to preface this. Have you gone on any of those escape rooms before?
Oh, the escape?
Have you done those escape rooms before?
Oh, no, I have not. I have not.
But
no.
you know the premise of it?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so as long as you know the premise of it, you're scheduled to go to an escape room. You get to pick 3 people, whoever you want, whether it's celebrities or some famous person or even fictional characters to go with you to beat this escape room. Who are those 3 people?
Elon Musk, my wife, and I would have to say JT Fox.
Awesome. Elon Musk, JT shows up at your door and goes, "Ooh, I can't wait to go into this escape room. Boy, I'm hungry." And you go, "Don't worry, guys. I'm gonna go fix you something nice. Just give me a moment." What's that special dish that you prepare?
It would be probably soul food. I would make a plate of soul food, make some ribs, maybe some pork roast and some greens and some macaroni and cheese and peach cobbler and potato salad. I would have to be able to put a meal like that together. I can do that.
You're all gonna be falling asleep before you get to the escape room.
Yes, exactly.
All right, you're on your way to the escape room. For some reason, it's a long drive. And for one reason or another, there's only one song that's playing on repeat in that car. What's that one song you don't mind listening to?
Happy with Pharrell Williams.
Good choice. Keeps everybody in good mood. Give me a number from 1 to 6.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The last one. How is success like birds?
What was the question again?
How is success like birds? So use birds as a metaphor for success.
That's excellent. Excellent. I think that if you fly like an eagle, you fly like a bird, you take yourself up to a different level, so you can actually get away from all the different things that you see, the minutia that's around you, go up high, take a look at things from a global perspective, from a higher level, from a 10,000-foot view. And I think that you'll see things different. And I think that is one of the greatest levels of success, is being able to take your mind to a different level, think different, think of different processes, think of different ways that you want that outcome to be. And I think it gives you a strategic view that's different from everything else.
Awesome. So that's how success is like birds. If you picked 5, it was chocolate, and I thought that would have been good too. Anyway, okay. Any last words from you that you would like to share?
And I have to go back and say that I'm really positive, really optimistic, and into where we can grow as a society with technology. And I think there's a lot of good that we could do in regards to medical. I think that we can come up with some cures from different elements and different diseases, and that inhibits everybody around the world. I think that we can use it in a manner to actually solve issues like drought, famine, water issues. And I see and read about this all the time. But I think that we could take technology to another level. But I think that we need to make sure that we actually use critical thinking skill sets and actually make sure that we keep it inside of its swim lanes and be very careful with it. Otherwise, it can dramatically go the other direction, and it can actually hurt us a lot more or a lot worse than what we think it can.
Terminator is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
They can actually personally email me at mhamilton@infinivate.com. That way, that's probably the best way, or do info@infinivate.com, and I'll get back to individuals.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you very much for your time. Everybody out there, make sure you connect with Maurice here. Obviously, a great person to talk to, lots of fun, lots of energy, and I'm sure there's ways that he could find to help you grow your business and increase your revenues and also increase just the efficiency of what you're doing. So make sure you reach out to Maurice, connect with him online, all that great stuff. And until next time, he's Maurice. My name's Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.